Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new PennyWise podcast from Lee Enterprises. I'm your host, Teri Barr. Happy to have you here with us today. Today's topic is really one all of you want to hear about. You have asked us to dive into the topic of trying to buy used cars and what that market is like these days. So happy to welcome in as our guest today. We have Kimberly Palmer. Kimberly is the personal finance expert with NerdWallet. She's going to help us understand what is going on with the used car market. Kimberly, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, it's a thrill, especially knowing that this is really something the listeners are interested in right now. So let's dive into the idea of buying a used or even a new car. Is the used car market as hot as the new car market is right now?
It really is. And in some ways, it can be even harder and more expensive to buy a used car right now. And that just really speaks to the demand that we're seeing for vehicles and also the supply chain. There's just so much delays. And so it can be really hard to find the car that you want, whether it's used or new, at the price that you're looking for. It's been a challenge for people.
Wow. And this has been going on for a while, hasn't it?
It has. We really saw it start with the pandemic. And, in some ways, the challenges have just gotten worse because we've seen a bigger buildup of these supply chain issues, especially over the last few months. There's been a lot of news stories about it, and you hear people, it's just hard to find the cars right now.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we haven't swayed them at this point. They're still going to look for a used car. The interesting thing that has really developed in the last few years, especially, there's some options to buying a used car. Can you kind of tell us about those?
We have seen so much growth when it comes to buying used cars online. And it can be a really good thing for consumers because in some ways it's easier and more convenient to shop online for a used car. I mean, it's such a big purchase. And so you want to make sure you're comparison shopping and looking and reading all the details before you buy. And for some people, it's just easier to do that from home because you don't feel rushed. You can compare and shop around at different retailers very quickly from the comfort of your own home. And then of course, with the pandemic, a lot of people just feel more comfortable shopping from home and skipping the in-person experience. And so it's really easier than ever to go that route.
Wow. Do you think people are still shopping in person too, because they like that, personal contact or personal service? But is that something we may see less of?
I think so. I think that we are seeing a big shift to online shopping, even for these big purchases like a car. But there's pros and cons of both sides because a lot of people also really want to take that test drive. And that's not something you can do when you're buying a car online. And for some people, that's a deal breaker. So they want to go in person, they want to do the test drive, they want to inspect it with their own eyes and just make sure it's exactly what they're looking for. And so that is probably the biggest drawback to shopping online for a used car.
Okay. Oh, that's so interesting. Now, are there other advantages, disadvantages for either one for people to consider, or is it an individual basis, I guess?
I think it is such a personal decision based on your own comfort levels. But in terms of the pros of shopping online for a used car, I mean, the biggest one is transparency and that ease of comparison across different retailers. You can really see all of the fees and the price that you'll be charged up front, and you won't be surprised by any fees, which is a huge plus for consumers. No one likes being surprised by fees. And so that's probably the biggest plus side. In terms of shopping in person, I think that's really for people that don't want to give up that test drive. They love that in-person experience of just examining what it is they're buying, because a car is such a big expense. It's such a big purchase.
Yeah. And I think I've been hearing that in some cases, used cars can almost rival the prices of new cars.
It's really incredible. It speaks to the supply chain issues that we're seeing right now. But because there is such a backup of new cars, and you might just simply not be able to find a new car, at least the specific new car that you're looking for. And as a result, we have more people turning to the used car market to find what they want, especially if they can't wait, if they don't have the flexibility, they need that car now. And as a result, we're seeing those prices be driven up.
Wow. Okay. You have some great ideas, a couple of tips that I would love to share with our listeners. Let's start with that test drive. You were talking about taking a test drive. What is the tip when it comes to that?
Well, one thing that's important to note is that even though you can't go and test drive that specific vehicle, that used vehicle that you're thinking of buying, you can do your own test drive at home if you have a friend or someone you're close to, maybe a neighbor who has that similar car that you're thinking of buying. Maybe ask if you could do a little test drive with them just so you get a feel for that car. And it's a way of getting a taste of what you're about to buy, even acknowledging that you have to skip the specific test drive of the car that you're buying.
Oh my gosh, I never thought about that.
Mhm.
Now, could you actually go to a dealer, take the test drive, and then walk away and come back and use the online to buy it if you like a similar car?
Of course. I mean, basically, dealerships are set up to make it easy for people to do test drives. Of course, you should expect that they will try to,
Oh,
convince or
yeah.
encourage you to make the purchase there. That's part of the whole process. But as long as you are ready for that, and it can give you another point of information, and there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that, to be as informed a consumer as you can be.
Oh, there it is. Be an informed consumer. Oh, that is perfect. Okay, so how about this? Talking about an informed consumer, tip two that you have is shopping around for your loan ahead of time. Again, I did not even think of that.
I think it's such a common mistake. I know it's one that I made early on in my first car purchase. You go to the dealer and you just go ahead, go through with whatever is being offered to you in terms of the financing. It sounds like a really good deal, but the fact is you can potentially find better deals if you comparison shop in advance. And this is the case whether you are going in person or you're planning to buy through an online used car dealership or online retailer for a used car. You can shop around ahead of time for your auto loan. You can compare prices or compare the interest rate that you're being
Yeah.
offered. And that way you can choose what will give you the best price.
And the interest rates are still fairly decent, aren't they?
That's right. Even though we do
Yeah.
anticipate rates rising as the year
Mhm.
goes on, right now we are still in a low interest rate environment, relatively speaking. And so there are good deals out there, especially if you're coming into it with a decent credit score and you can get some competitive offers. It's worth
Yeah.
doing that just to see what you can get.
Awesome. Okay. How about setting up an inspection when you get the car? This makes absolute sense.
I think it's so important for people to know that you still have the option. Once you receive the used car that you bought online, you have a period of time that you can actually return it if you're really not happy, not satisfied customer. And the specifics will vary by retailer. So you want to make sure you read that fine print and you know the rules. You probably have to keep the mileage under a certain amount, for example,
Ah,
but you have that period of time to get your own inspector, get an inspection. Of course, you'll have to pay for that service, but it's
mhm.
worth it probably to make sure you know what you're getting into and that there's no unpleasant surprises as you drive your car around.
Let me ask you real quick. The online, they'll tell you, okay, this is good, this is good. I'm assuming, but it's still good, like a good backup plan to go get your own inspection and know for sure what is there with this used car.
It is because it just
Okay.
gives you more information. And because you do have such a narrow window when it's okay to make that return without penalty, you want to make sure you know exactly what you're getting into, especially if you have any concerns at all. Maybe you notice something or there's a strange sound or something you weren't expecting with the
Yeah.
engine. Make sure you get that inspection because that can just set your mind at ease in case something comes up later.
Yeah. And of course, this is tip four. You want to take that post delivery test drive, which I assume means take it as soon as you get the car. Is that right?
Absolutely. So even though you've already driven your neighbor's car around, it's not quite the same as once you get your actual car.
True.
You want to drive it around, take it for a test drive, see what it feels like when you accelerate, when you brake quickly, and you just want to make sure that you are comfortable with it. You don't have any lingering questions or concerns because you do have that short amount of time when you can still make the return.
Okay. And so those are your four tips. But now I do have that question about you can really return a car. This just seems like such a mind-blowing idea because we think about, how fast we've all gotten now with our other online orders. And if you don't like it, you just plop it in a box and send it on back. How does this work with a car?
It's not as easy as returning shoes or clothes, but it is still
Right.
possible. So you're not going to package it up and mail it back, but you will either have it picked up or driven to a central location to be dropped off. So it is possible. You do want to make sure that you read carefully when you're making the purchase, just so you understand the restrictions, because there will be some kinds of restrictions in terms of the mileage or the amount of time. You don't have infinite amount of time to make the return. So you do want to check what that window is.
Okay. Wow. Bottom line, Kimberly, what do you think? Is it worth it?
I think the bottom line is that if you are in the market for a used car, absolutely consider shopping online for it. There's just been so much growth in this area, and you might be able to find what you're looking for more easily than if you only go in person.
This is incredible. Anything else we need to think about?
I think the biggest one is just to be flexible. If you have the flexibility in terms of the type of car that you're buying or how old it is, that's where you can find the better deals. Because if you're really specific in what you want, it can be hard to find a good price.
Okay. Kimberly, that was an incredible discussion. And thank you for doing this, knowing we have listeners that are so interested in this topic right now.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Okay, everybody. Kimberly Palmer, she is a personal finance expert with NerdWallet. And we tackled your topic. We were so excited to hear from all of you about wanting to know how to buy a used car and why to consider doing it online. And Kimberly will let you know if we have any follow-up questions, but that was a great discussion today. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for listening to this new PennyWise podcast. Of course, you can find any of our episodes. In fact, Kimberly, I believe this may take us over episode number 50. So I'm so excited. Yeah. So thank you for that. And we will see you again, a new topic every single week. Goodbye, everybody.